welcome back to the Doo Podcast. This is episode 26. As Chad just pointed out, the last one was 25. He missed it. Joining me right now is Daniel Palmer, dpalm66 on Twitter, and Chad, the intern, Chad_Floyd. And we're going to check in with those guys, but real quick, going to show some love to a listener. We have a new 5-star review from Meat686. On October 4th, he wrote this, and we've been remiss in not reading it, but he says, "Great college football pod. Not just for dogs. Any college football fans will enjoy." So, Meat686, thanks for the 5-star review. Everybody out there, we apologize for not getting this out sooner, but if you leave a 5-star review, we're going to read it on air. Daniel Palmer.
Meat, M-E-A-T or Meat, M-E-E-T?
Yeah, it's M-E-A-T. Kind of, he's a carnivore apparently. I'm not sure what we can assume from those numbers. I don't know if that's an area code that we should know, but I don't know. Chad, how was Georgia-Florida weekend? You went down there.
I'm back at about 90% as far as my health goes. We may or may not have picked up one of my buddies in the hospital on the way down to the game on Saturday. It was a doozy of a weekend, and there are stories that I cannot share on the podcast because my mother is apparently a listener.
So tell me more about this hospital pickup. Now, was this a planned thing, or was this he's hospital?
This was a situation where we left Buddy at the bar at about 10 o'clock because he was he had other ideas, and we got a call from the Brunswick Hospital on Saturday morning at about 8:30. "Hi, we have your friend blank at the hospital. We need you to come pick him up." All right.
And blank's okay now, I assume.
Blank is fine. His dignity is not quite back intact, but
nor should it be.
It was a doozy. He was led with violence by the hospital staff. I mean, it was a mess.
Very good. Daniel Palmer, how was your weekend?
Unlike Chad, I would never describe anything as a doozy, let alone twice in one story. My weekend was great. I got to watch Georgia beat Florida, and a lot of pacing, a lot of worries. Got to go and do some touristy things down in Old City, see the Liberty Bell, see Constitution Hall, and see some of the things that the greater Philadelphia area has to offer. That's about it, though.
Very good. Well, sounds like a not quite a doozy.
Not quite a doozy.
Sounds like you didn't want to have a doozy.
Oh, come on now.
No. I'm doozy-free.
Well, my weekend was thoroughly uneventful aside from Georgia's big win. That was pretty sweet. It didn't matter what else happened that weekend. That made the weekend good. We are recording a day early. It's Wednesday. This is going to be live Thursday morning because we have some big national games of interest that are actually airing Thursday night. So we're going to talk SEC football. We're going to talk briefly about Georgia, App State, but we're going to spend a good bit of this podcast towards the end talking about some national games, the national BCS picture, as well as even the Heisman race. So it's going to be a little bit of a broader focus, so hopefully everybody will bear with us. That being said, let's jump into some SEC games. Daniel Palmer, I'm going to start with you because this is one that I just feel like you need to warm us up with. Vanderbilt at Florida. It's a noon game on Saturday. Neither team ranked. Both teams, I think, have the same overall record, but obviously Florida's been much better in SEC play, but at the same time lost to Georgia, a team that Vanderbilt beat. Can you really learn anything about how these two teams played against Georgia, given the fact that Georgia was kind of a different ball club from these two games?
No, I think the level of injury and the level of bang-uppedness going into that Vanderbilt game really kind of speaks to a huge difference going to the Florida game. You look at the Vandy game, we threw up 114 yards passing, which is not this offense. That's an offense that had literally one healthy receiver who got hurt in the middle of the game, Chris Conley, and you couldn't stretch the field. You couldn't do pass protections. The Georgia offense you saw on Saturday against Florida is more akin to the one we're used to seeing, where you've got downfield routes, good combo routes, and backs in the block, freeing up your tight ends. I think that that was against one of the best groups of DBs in the nation, definitely in the conference, but I put up there in the nation. That Florida secondary, nothing to be taken lightly, and Georgia kind of had their way with them through the air. And so I think it's going to be another defensive struggle, which is all Florida's games are, just because the way they score isn't pretty, but they get a turnover, get a short field or two, and they can make you pay. This Vanderbilt team is – I just think the physicality-wise, it's going to be a Florida win. It's in the swamp, which I hate saying. It's in Gainesville. Sorry I said that. Yeah, I think Florida wins walking away. I think this isn't a Vanderbilt team that's going to surprise anyone. They've shown everything they've got, and what they got was good enough to beat an injured Georgia team.
Yeah, Chad, any way that, this Vanderbilt team can capitalize off a Florida team that's also pretty banged up and pull off another upset?
I mean, I didn't realize until just now that that we were Vanderbilt's only SEC win.
Yep.
So proud.
Yeah, that's awesome. But I just think Vandy just caught us right at the right time. I mean, came off the huge September and then the Tennessee game where everybody got hurt. Catch Vandy right after that. That was just an absolute setup letdown game. I think Florida's going to come out looking to punish people. They lost yet another starter to season-ending injury this week on a scooter accident. I don't really think that has an effect on the game, though. I think Florida's just too physical, too good in the defense, like Palmer said. I think Florida, especially at home, goes ahead and takes this game.
Yeah, I think we're all in agreement here. I mean, I think everything that in theory led to a Vanderbilt win over Georgia is to an extent in play, as far as injuries are concerned and all of that, and anything can happen any week in the SEC. But at the same time, I don't think Florida's going to give up 21 points off special teams, and that's really what Vanderbilt needed to beat Georgia, even with that. Next game I've got on my slate is a noon game on ESPN on Saturday between number 9 Auburn and Tennessee. This is an interesting matchup. These aren't teams that play very often, so that's always a little bit intriguing. But you also kind of have the idea, a lot of people still view Tennessee as kind of an upset capable team. They obviously pushed Georgia as far as Georgia could handle and then got the upset against South Carolina, but they've also taken their lumps the last 2 weeks. Chad, any way that, Tennessee can play host and play underdog upset against Auburn?
I think this game could play out really similarly to the Auburn-Texas A&M game where there was not much defense played. Tennessee doesn't have a dynamic quarterback like either Auburn or A&M does. But, Auburn's been really good on the defensive front four, but on the back end has been susceptible to decent passing attacks. I think it could be a good game. I think I would probably take Tennessee to cover, but Auburn to win. And, for some reason, even as the biggest Auburn trumpeter on this podcast, I'm still not completely sold on them.
Every week.
I'm still not completely sold on them as a top 15, top 20 team. So I think they are susceptible to the upset. I hope they can hold out until the Bulldogs get down to the Plains and win it then. But yeah, I got Auburn in this game.
Daniel Palmer, speak to Chad's point because I think I actually agree with him, and we don't want everyone to agree. So I'm just going to tell you what your opinion is, and I'm going to make you support it. Auburn, your opinion is that Auburn is a top 10 team.
Okay. Well, like Chad said, defensively up front, they'll get after you. They'll get after your quarterback. They'll stop your running game, and once they've done that, they can really allow your defensive line to tee off, and it helps hide a bad secondary. It's not a bad secondary, but it's an improving secondary, and the defensive pass rush helps hide that. Offensively, they've really, really embraced this wide open read option offense, and they've done it to great success. The quarterback's making great decisions with the football when he decides to pull it or decides to give it, and the play action they have off of that action exploits you in the backfield because, as we've seen with Georgia's secondary all year, teams that get beaten a lot with the read option and safeties want to creep up, that's when they peak, that's when they look a little bit too long, you get that step and hit you with a big play down the field. I will say this about this football game. I think they're better than I ever thought they could be. Tennessee is too. I think Auburn's a little bit better here, especially this weekend coming up right before the Georgia game. Some would say it could be a trap game, but this is not going to be that. My biggest issue right now is actually what I sent in to Mike Felder over at Bleacher Report for his Your Best 11 mailbag today. Georgia doesn't do well against mobile quarterbacks. And I know we've got App State. You don't want to look past them, but we've got Auburn coming up, and I'm questioning if I should really watch this game at all because I'm super, super, super nervous about to see how Georgia's defense has evolved against this specific attack throughout the year.
Yeah, that's my biggest concern if we're looking a week ahead, and that's what concerns me, and it's concerned me for several years, is that idea of a mobile quarterback, especially a mobile quarterback that's got a little extra motivation taking on his old team. you hate to have that happen. I hate that Georgia's playing at Auburn for a second year in a row. And again, I know that's next week, but that definitely concerns me. I do think Auburn's got a tough schedule to finish out the year. It's never easy to play at Tennessee, especially against a Tennessee team that I do think, regardless of record, is trending up. Certainly better than they were last year. I think they're getting more competitive. So that's going to be a tough game. Hosting Georgia is going to be a more difficult game than it looked like it would have been 2 or 3 weeks ago, now that we see that Todd Gurley can come back and be healthy and contribute, and we see what Michael Bennett means to the offense.
Yep. Rumpf. The emergence of Rumpf.
Yes. We need more Rumpf in our lives. And then obviously Auburn's got to close with Alabama. So, I mean, I think you've got 3 pretty difficult games to close out the season for Auburn. So I'm really intrigued to kind of see how they end up. Another team that's ranked right there in the top 10 is number 8, Missouri. They're traveling to Kentucky. I don't think we need to talk about this, but I will ask the same question to you, Chad. Is Missouri a top 10 team?
Without James Franklin, I don't think they are. Even though, they just absolutely obliterated Tennessee without him last week. I just don't think they have that explosive nature. Matty Mock's not quite the same dual threat that Franklin is. That being said, yeah, well, they beat Tennessee in November. But, I mean, that being said, they are as close to a national contender as the SEC East has right now, just due to the unfortunate injuries at Georgia and the damn that's a shame injuries at Florida. But, yeah, I like Missouri in this game. I hate to say it, but I enjoy watching them play. They do pretty much everything well that Auburn does well, and there's this outside chance I was about to mention that Auburn could be playing for an SEC championship berth when the Dogs go down there next weekend.
Yeah, that's what's really compelling, and I think we'll skip over again the Missouri-Kentucky game, but as we've talked about really for the last couple of weeks, the SEC East is Missouri's to lose, and every week that goes by, I find that less and less likely to happen. But in the West, it's wide open. I mean, if you think this game for LSU means nothing against Alabama, and we'll talk about it in a few minutes, you're wrong because LSU is not out of the West. Alabama, number 1 team in the country, but still has to go through LSU and Auburn. Auburn, a one-loss team, still has a chance to knock off that number 1 team. So they're very much in it. And really, if you're looking at a one-loss team coming out of the SEC, as long as you've only got 1 loss and you can still win your division, you're a national title contender, and Auburn's right there in that hunt. And I guess in theory, so is Missouri at this point. Looking ahead, Arkansas, Ole Miss. Daniel Palmer, any reason to think that anything other than Ole Miss is going to roll?
Not in my eyes. I think this is a game where Ole Miss, they've had have an up and down season, but they've done what they're supposed to do against teams they're supposed to beat. This is a team they're supposed to beat at home. It's a noon start, so those Ole Miss people are going to be in the Grove early. Having a good time, and I think it's one of those games where it's just kind of almost arithmetic, and this is all preamble for the big one later on that night.
Yeah, absolutely. And the one point I would make, it's unfortunate for Arkansas that their schedule was so damn difficult this year. I don't think they're a great team, but I do think they're probably a little better than their record. And they've lost 6 in a row, but 5 of those were to teams, the last 5 actually, to teams that were ranked in the top 25. So a little bit difficult. Chad, any compelling storyline that you want to watch in this game, or are you just going to kind of remote control surf?
USA Today released its coach pay rankings today, and Brett Bielema, that name is so hard to say. Burt Brett. He is at $5.1 million, exceeded only by Nick Saban and Mac Brown, 2 guys who are connected in a way that we might discuss later.
We might. Man, what a tease.
Right.
Let's talk real quick about this Georgia App State game. I think this is really the game that everybody's going to be wanting to watch in that coveted 12-21 slot. This game's actually, interestingly enough, airing on ABC in the Atlanta market, which is kind of unique because.
Really?
Yeah, very. I'm actually going to be out of town, so I probably will not see this game. I don't foresee it being a big player up in Washington D.C. on their networks, but.
Name dropping.
Not a whole lot to say. Not a whole lot to say, regarding this game. I mean, obviously you don't want the Michigan thing to happen again. I don't think it's going to. The only thing I'm remotely curious about is I really want to see Hudson Mason play from that backup quarterback spot and get a little bit of a taste of what's going on there. As I say that, I think Daniel Palmer's disagreeing. What are your thoughts, Palmer?
This call to see backups. I don't understand it. I get we want to know the future, but let's enjoy what we've got. We've got the most prolific quarterback in the history of the SEC. I want him out there as long as possible, throwing as many touchdowns as possible. He's one short of the career touchdown mark for passing touchdowns in the SEC. That will definitely fall this weekend. My only knowledge of App State, like you said, is the Michigan thing. They recruited me to play football there, and I went to a wrestling camp there, so I happen to know it's in Boone, North Carolina. That said, this game's in Athens. The team across the other side of the field doesn't matter this week. The game's about us. Go Dogs. That's it.
Yeah, Chad, any thoughts you go into this game?
I'm going to head there for probably a half. I've got the noon slate's as good as I've ever seen a noon slate, so I'm probably going to go see Murray set the touchdown record and get on out. But as far as thoughts go, I mean, I hope Georgia breaks the trend of having the underwhelming performance against the Buffaloes and the inferior opponents that we have seen in the past. So we can see some of the backup guys and protect Gurley, Murray, Bennett, etc. from injuries. That's basically what I want to see out of the game. Considering App State is 2-7, and actually they beat Georgia Southern.
Handily.
Come to think of it, ran out their coach that won them 3 national championships. Yeah, I want Georgia to go ahead and roll by 35 points in the first quarter.
Yeah, the only thing I'm remotely interested on the App State side, and don't think for a second that I've watched them play or watched any film, but they've got a running back. He's a true freshman out of Georgia, Marcus Cox. He's accounted for 1,300 yards and 14 touchdowns in 9 games. So he was a 2-star recruit. It's not like Georgia let him get away, so to speak. But I mean, that's the only guy I see on their roster, just from a statistical standpoint, that you even really foresee having any degree of production. We'll skip ahead. 3:30 Mississippi State at number 15 Texas A&M. Obviously, you got Manziel playing. Daniel Palmer, what are some things you're looking for in this game outside of just Manziel's 415 yards and 4 touchdowns in the game of total offense, which is what he's averaging in his starts this year?
That's horrifying, first of all. Second of all,
I say that like it's not a big deal.
Oh, it's a huge deal.
The same old 4-15 and 4.
It's a little boring. I wish you'd mix it up and go have a bad game. I think that this is going to be another one of those games where you see Mike Evans kind of announce himself, and I think that one of the big subplots for A&M, beyond the development of that defense, which has gotten better every week, has been the impending leaving or return of Mike Evans and Johnny Manziel. I think Evans' decision is going to depend a lot on Manziel's decision and vice versa, but you've got a guy with that kind of size, that kind of down-the-field speed, and who's getting separation against top defensive backs. You've got to look at yourself as a top 15 draft pick and try to might have to make a hard decision. For me, it wouldn't be a hard decision. Go get paid, go get your money. But for this kid, when the guys got around him, maybe it's a tough decision. I hope it's not. I hope he makes a move just because I don't want to see him play in the SEC anymore. But Manziel's got that same decision coming up. This is going to be one of those games where these two could be one of the last couple times you can see these two play together, and that's something special.
Yeah, one thing I noticed this week, I was looking at A&M stats and just looking at Manziel in general, because he's actually having a much better season passing, and I think that's been talked about quite a bit this year. And he's not running the ball as much, but I was looking at who he's throwing the ball to. Evans is his leading receiver in catches, and the second leading receiver has 47 catches. Evans has 52. Evans has more than twice as many yards and more than twice as many touchdowns as their second leading receiver, and he just has 5 more catches. I mean, it's his numbers are ridiculous.
Yeah.
1,150 yards, 22 yards a catch, 12 touchdowns. He's got a long of 95. For a guy, like you said earlier, for that size to have that kind of speed, he's truly a unique talent. And like I said, I mean, if he goes, it's going to impact Manziel's production on the field. And I'm with you. If I'm him, I'm going, and I think he's –
Manziel can go too, though. He's a redshirt sophomore.
Right.
They could both.
So I think if he goes, Manziel definitely will.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, I'm with you. Chad, anything you're looking for in this game other than Manziel and Evans?
Well, I think Evans is definitely gone. I mean, he's the top receiver taken in the draft, no questions asked. I mean, I don't want to compare him to Megatron, but he's got the same size speed combo. He's just not quite as explosive as Megatron, I guess.
Would you say he's Megatronish?
He could be compared to Megatron, I will say.
All right.
He's not dissimilar.
They are not at all dissimilar. But you know, A&M's had 7 guys with over 20 receptions last year. They're on the way to having that again this year. It's not like Manziel's just chucking it up to Evans on every play. And it's ridiculous because you see all their big plays and you see Mike Evans catches a screen pass, takes it 40 yards. Mike Evans goes over 2 defenders and drags them into the end zone. Both times we've seen that have been the CBS 3:30 games against Alabama and Auburn. They're playing the undercard CBS game against Mississippi State. I think predicting a big game for their combo is right on point, but I'm honestly more intrigued by the Texas A&M defense to see if they have a pulse, honestly, because you know everything we predicted about them improving or having tough competition early in the season just has not come true. So I just want to see if they can do anything against a pretty inept Mississippi State offense.
Yeah, it's interesting. As good as Manziel's been, obviously they've lost 2 games, and you can't put that on Manziel because the formula now for beating Texas A&M is scoring 45 or more points. And I have a really hard time pinning any of that on Manziel or the offense in general. So you got to feel like Mississippi State does not have the offense to put up 45 points the way that the 2 teams from the state of Alabama did. And speaking of one of those teams from the state of Alabama, the University of Alabama, number 1 team in the country, playing host to number 13 LSU. Game day is going to be there. This is the 8 o'clock game. Pretty exciting matchup here. I don't think it's lost its luster by LSU losing to. Do you, Daniel?
No, not even a little bit.
Chad, is this game, it's not being hailed as the game of the century that it was a couple years ago. It's not 1 versus 2. But do you think we could have the same kind of late game finish that we've seen in the last couple of years? Outside of that national championship?
This is the one game when everybody's schedule is released that I find on the calendar every year because it's always just a slugfest. It's 2 teams playing old school, put a hat on man football. I love it. I can't wait. I think it will be another close game. I think Alabama's going to pull it out, but I think Mettenberger's going to have actually the Mettenberger that we know now started last year against Alabama. And I think with Landry and Beckham on the outside, I think that could be a problem for Alabama again. I mean, they have not stopped the big-name receivers yet this year. They've just done everything else.
Daniel Palmer, we'll get into kind of prediction and analysis a little bit more, but how excited are you about this game?
It's altering travel plans. So we're taking the train into New York to go see Columbia and see the campus and watch Columbia lose to Harvard. Go blue, but we know it's going to happen. And I'm on the fence. We can either take the 7 o'clock train out and we miss like 20 minutes of the game, or we can take the train after the game and hope for the best. I'm giddy. I'm borderline giddy for this game. I think the loss of sincerity in that secondary really opens it up for Mettenberger and that passing attack. We've spoken a lot at length, especially during LSU week, about how important Cam Cameron, that offensive play calling's been for this unit. But this is the biggest test they're going to see, obviously. But I also think it's the biggest test that Alabama's going to see because it's such a multiple offense. They've got that punishing running attack. But if you can't load the box and say Zach Mettenberger beat me because he will beat you. He couldn't do it last year. This year he's got that edge. He's got that extra something to him. He's got the play calling behind him to do it. And I think it's just going to be a hell of a game.
The line on this, Palmer, and I'm going to come right back to you on this, and then we'll head over to the intern next. But the line is Alabama by 12.5. Even if I didn't know anything about these teams, just knowing the way these teams have played recently, and the last 2 regular season games, that line seems ridiculously large. Does that line seem just a little bit big to you?
It does, but the thing is, they don't set the lines for a prediction. They set the lines to get action on both sides. That said, I wouldn't bet this game, period, taking the points or not. The simple reason that if LSU gets down early, let's say they get down 2 quick touchdowns, and Alabama's able to adjust their defense to really focus on that passing attack and not really worry about pacing on the run, and you're going to feel pressure on the road saying, we've got to score. We've got to score. It becomes a lot easier to find yourself in 3rd and long. And 3rd and long in Tuscaloosa at night is not a place you want to be, especially down some points.
Chad, thoughts on this game? Within the context of the line or outside of it, what are you thinking score-wise?
Put me right on the spot. The 12.5 seems a little high. It seems like a sucker bet for LSU. That's going to put me right on the Alabama outscoring them by 13 or 14 train, just because they have just absolutely pummeled everybody they played in October. And I don't really know that. I mean, everybody talks about Oregon and Florida State, but good Lord, Alabama's given up like 4 points a game in SEC play. Outside of Texas A&M, obviously. But yeah, I think Alabama just goes ahead and covers. Unfortunately, I want this to be an absolute slugfest. I just think Alabama pulls away very late in the fourth quarter, but I think it's going to be just an absolute dogfight for 3 quarters. We'll see about it.
Yeah, I hope so. I mean, I'm with you. This is a game that I immediately, as soon as its schedule comes out, I look for it and I peg it as one. It doesn't matter what the records are. It doesn't matter what it is. It's in my mind, it's I understand the history of the Auburn-Alabama matchup, but for me, this is the Georgia-Florida of the West, and that it doesn't really matter what else is going on. It's great. This is one of just 3 top 15. Yeah.
Hold on. This has been the Georgia-Florida of the West since when you say either 07? Before that, Alabama was on a downward trend. Georgia-Florida is a game that I'm not trying to sit here and poo-poo anyone's points, but I think that
I feel pooped on.
You should, a little bit. I'm not trying to poo-poo. A single poo will do. That rhyme, that was awesome.
If they played Alabama LSU at a neutral site, where would they play it?
Hell.
Shreveport, then?
Yeah, Shreveport. That was weird.
That was very weird.
Gulf Shores?
I mean, they'll never move it. The thing is, they have no reason to. Both home crowds are so good, and it's not that far. Both teams travel well. I think the reason Georgia-Florida did is mostly for Jacksonville's requested tax base. We could do that, and the neutral site just happens to work with Frat Beach and everything else that happens that weekend, and the reason you're still at 90%.
Oh.
Harsh memories.
Harsh memories.
I'll tell more stories when we're no longer alive.
Deal.
It's a problem.
Deal. All right. Well, I started to say this. This is one of 3 top 15 versus top 15 matchups we have this week, and the other one's one that we talked at the very beginning, I think in one of our first ever podcasts about, and that is number 3 Oregon traveling to number 5 Stanford. We're going to talk a lot about a couple national games. We're obviously transitioning away from the SEC, and this is one of, if not the only national game that we pegged at the very beginning of the season as one we were excited to watch. And this is on Thursday night, so by the time you're listening to this game's tonight, 9 o'clock on ESPN. Both of these teams are in the same division. Both of them have a very realistic shot at winning the Pac-12, which is, over the last couple of years become quite a powerful conference. Chad, with this game, you've got conflicting styles. Which do you think, lends itself better on a national scale? In other words, makes the most viable national championship candidate?
I mean, I picked Stanford to represent the non-SEC region in the national championship game before the season. And, I had the tape of last year's Stanford-Oregon game still on my DVR and watched it recently. And what jumped out to me was Stanford on the edge was just abusing Oregon's receivers and tight ends and just taking them out of the play on speed options, on anything that was going to the outside, and just taking that aspect of Oregon's offense away, which is a huge aspect of Oregon's offense because they want to create one-on-one matchups. I don't know if they're going to be as capable of that this year because Oregon can actually get the ball downfield. But then, okay, I tried to transition and then just failed to. I told you I'm not 100%. On the other side of the ball.
This is 90% intern.
Yeah, this is not good. On the other side, on the other side of the ball, Stanford's offense has not really done anything too impressive this year. They don't have Toby Gerhart. They don't have Andrew Luck. They don't really even have, some of the horses from last year are not really producing to the extent they did last year. So I think Oregon, with the threat of a vertical passing game, the fact that their quarterback's running for 9 yards a carry, has the advantage. But being at Stanford, you never know. I mean, the nerds could get out there, and it could be a hostile environment. I doubt it, but it could be. But
Did you
I've got
say
Oregon.
nerves or nerds?
NERDS, nerds, very similar to what we would call Georgia Tech students.
Yes.
Great band, great band though.
All right, so I'm moving over to Palmer now. I'm giving the intern a rest. Maybe he can recover a little bit and be ready for the next hot question coming his way. But Palmer, similar question to you. If we assume, let's work on the assumption that Alabama is going to represent the SEC, and I realize that's an assumption, but let's just go with it. Which of these teams matches up better with Alabama? Because obviously you have Stanford that seems like the more similar style of play, at least, but then you have Oregon that maybe could create more mismatches with Alabama. Who matches up most favorably in a head-to-head matchup with the Crimson Tide?
If they played next week, it'd be Oregon. If they play as they do for the national title after that long layoff, it's Stanford. The best thing about Stanford's offense is that they don't allow penetration, but Stanford's offensive line historically and this year has struggled against larger defensive lines that drive upfield. You find me a bigger and meaner and nastier historically the last 4 years, front four than Alabama, I'll give you my hat, and I love this hat. I do, I really do. It's something that it's a situational thing that if Oregon was on Alabama's schedule, I think it's a more even matchup because you catch people off guard. But when you say that you got that prep time, you give Saban and that coaching staff time to dissect your offense, you want something that can match up physically with them. And up front, Oregon doesn't. On the edges, the speed is comparable. We saw it against Auburn in the national title game a couple years back. They can match up skill position-wise on the outside with the SEC top-end speed. The difference becomes inside and up front when you can't block these guys. And not only can you not block them, but they're faster than you. So all of a sudden you're scrambling for your life against a guy who's 300 pounds who shouldn't be moving the way he's moving, and you got yourself a lot of questions. And that first time you get hit by someone bigger, faster, and stronger than you, it causes a lot of doubt on that offensive line, on that sideline.
Especially when it's Nick Fairley.
Especially with Nick Fairley, but I'm just saying, like, you can game plan all you want. It's hard to game plan against size and aggression, and that's what the Alabama defense would bring to an Oregon game. Stanford, they're having a down year. No one's making any bones about it. Their offense hasn't been as sharp, especially in the passing game. I don't think either one of these teams beats Alabama after a layoff. Spoilers for later in the podcast, in my opinion. But I do think that a neutral field layoff, Stanford puts up a more, if not competitive game, more compelling game early. I think Alabama shuts down the Oregon offense quick, and a lot of questions get asked, and then you start to see, maybe you see Marcus Mariota's first pick of the year, because right now the kid is sitting at 20 touchdowns, 2,200 yards, and no interceptions with a 64% completion percentage. That's amazing. The kid's a great quarterback, but we're going to see he's going to be tested. And regardless of what Chad says, I know you said that they're nerds out there. Those nerds get rowdy. That's not going to be a fun place to play Thursday night for that Oregon team.
So, Palmer, right back to you. Is this relatively down Stanford team going to be able to, I guess it's technically an upset. Are they going to be able to upset Oregon at home? Can they
I don't think so. I think this is the year where Oregon kind of steps up, as it were, on the road and decides that this is not the game we're losing. I would like to see Stanford win just for – I like David Shaw. I like the program they run there. And I'd like the BCS picture to be a little less cloudy.
Yeah.
But for sake of just having watched both teams play a whole lot of football this year, unless Stanford can, like Chad said earlier, get that pressure off the edge that they haven't really gotten this year excessively, but they haven't faced an offensive line that's built the way Oregon's is. It's a very unique team, presenting a very unique struggle, which is why so many teams do so poorly against them. But this is a Stanford team that's cracked the code before on the road. So that rhymed again too. And so I'm on fire tonight, Chad. Take a lap, Chad. So honestly, it's just going to come down to execution. Who can get the nerves settled down first? There's going to be a lot of them in this game, and it's going to be a hell of a ball game on Thursday. I'm taking Oregon. I think they're going to win the football game, but it's going to be one for the ages.
Yeah, I will say that I'm as excited about this game as I am the Alabama LSU game, and that's again for a pretty pro SEC guy like myself, that's saying a lot. Chad, how close can this game be? And in a roundabout way, who do you have winning this game?
Like I said, I think Oregon's going to go ahead and win it. I think it can be an extremely close game. Stanford is going to slow Oregon's offense better than anybody else will this season. And the home field, nerds or not, maybe they will create an intimidating environment in a 56,000 person stadium. But, Oregon's going to win this game by, I'd say, probably maybe 10 points. I don't really get the sense that Stanford's going to have the ball with a chance to win at the end of the game. Let's put it that way.
I want to read down Oregon's point totals this year. 66, 59, 59, 55, 57, 45, 62, and 42.
So when DeAnthony Thomas predicted that they would score at least 40 against Stanford, he was selling himself very short.
Well, I don't think so. 42 has been their low water mark this year. That was at home against UCLA last week.
Yeah.
And say what you will about the UCLA team, that's a good football team, and they played them fairly tight for the first quarter and a half, and then things got out of control.
No, it was a tie ball game into the third, well into the third.
And I think that's if Stanford can't get it done, that could be the next real hurdle for Oregon, and it could be their another signature win, because this is the last scheduled ranked opponent right now for Stanford or for Oregon, and so that could really be that Pac-12 or is it Pac-10, Pac-12, whatever it is. That title game is going to matter.
Yeah, from certainly some longer term implications that we'll get to kind of at the end when we talk about the national BCS picture. But from one high-powered offense led by a great quarterback to another, let's talk about Baylor, Oklahoma for a little bit. This Baylor offense is, some have said West Virginia, what's his name? Dana Holgerson said the best offense he's ever coached against. And maybe that was just because he just had his tail whipped and run all over the field. But there's something to be said for Bryce Petty in this offense. The quarterback at Baylor is Bryce Petty if you've never watched him play. But he's a guy hitting 70% of his passes for almost 2,500 yards. He's thrown a lot more interceptions than Mariota, infinitely more, because he's thrown 1 to Mariota's 0. Chad, this game, it's on a little bit earlier than the other one. You could probably watch the first half of this, but who do you have winning this? Number 6 Baylor playing host to number 10 Oklahoma.
Man, I can't wait for this game. Holgerson says that because his teams have given up an average of 68 points to Baylor the past 2 years. Baylor hasn't played anybody to really suggest that they're legit yet. However, that offense translates against most anybody. Oklahoma has the best defense in the SEC, though, or in the SEC. Jeez,
they don't in the
I'm
SEC.
Struggling. In the Big 12, good God, I am off, man. Honestly, I think this is going to be a tight game, but a high-scoring one. It all comes down to me to Oklahoma's quarterback play, and if they can keep pace with the Baylor offense. I think Baylor's just going to win this game in a shootout, to be frank with you.
Daniel Palmer, thoughts on this game?
I'm going to open up the same way I close out Oregon, reading off the point totals for this school.
Yes.
69, 70, 70, 73, 35, 71, and 59. That 35 low mark was against K-State at K-State on October 12th.
Which is by far the best team they played.
Thank you. It's by far the best team they played. It's a team that only allows 22 points a game. They allow just north of that average. This Oregon team's averaging, giving up 18 points a game. I'm not – obviously numbers lie. We know that. We've read Andrew's articles. But what I will say –
Thanks for reading.
Hey, you're welcome. See? That's reciprocity.
DutyCrazy.net. Check it out.
That's right.
Self-plugs. But this is an Oklahoma defense that the likes of which they really haven't seen yet. They're not hanging 70 on Stoops. I'd love to see it. I'm not a big Stoops fan. But they aren't doing it. And they aren't going to sit out here and say, oh, we're just going to throw all day on you and there's no real questions to be asked out there. I think that this team is in for a rude awakening. I don't think it's going to be as close as people think it's going to be. I think Oklahoma gets up big and starts rolling downhill. And it's one of those Oklahoma offenses, one of those offenses that once he gets scoring points, it's really hard to figure out where to stop. Because once you plug one hole in that levee, another one springs a leak. And so I think Oklahoma wins walking away. I may not watch this one as closely because I'm going to be really excited for this Oregon Stanford tilt later on, and I think I have to show some attention to my girlfriend before I start watching football for the next 5 days.
Palmer, Stoops or Shoops?
Either way, I don't like either one of them. I was talking about Stoops. I'm pretty sure I said Stoops, but Bob Shoop is the.
No, I'm asking which one you prefer.
Oh, which one I prefer? I never played for a Stoops, so I'm not Stoops. And Chad knows. And Andrew, I'll tell you offline. I can tell you stories about Bob Shoop too. But let's just say I'd take Stoops over Shoops.
All right.
There we have it. All right, let's talk about the Heisman Trophy race because we've been talking about these guys for the majority of the show anyway. And I'm going to throw out kind of 5 names here, and they're all quarterbacks, and I want to get the takes from you two guys. Take notes if you need. Number 1, Marcus Mariota, Oregon's quarterback, no interceptions. Number 2, Jameis Winston, famous Jameis. Number 3, Johnny Football, reigning Heisman Trophy winner. Number 4, Bryce Petty, who we just talked about, out of Baylor. And number 5, A.J. McCarron, a guy whose stats aren't quite what some of these other guys are, but look at how many games he's won. It would almost be a Lifetime Achievement Award in some regards. Daniel Palmer, if you're voting right now, who do you vote for out of those 5?
He's the most quotable. I'm not sure he can see on the field because he squints a lot. He just blew out Miami in Miami. Or excuse me, I don't know. Who cares where it was? He blew him out. Jameis Winston, the guy has gone on the road. He beat Clemson, beat the doors off of Clemson. He, I don't know if you guys follow the I guess the Tomahawk, the fan Twitter account for Florida State. They have Jameis Wednesdays because it's when he does his press conferences. They do the, I guess, press availability. He's the most quotable person in America. His coach said, Jimbo Fisher said today, I told Jameis next time, don't get involved in these fights in the field. I want you getting hurt. He said, well, I guess I'll just turn over to the coach and say, would you go do something about this? Like the guy's great on his feet. He's great with the crowd. I've watched some baseball highlights, which I never do. He's got a rocket arm out there too. He's exciting. He's fun to watch. Not to denigrate any other guys. I'll just walk down that list real quick. Mariota, we'll see after Thursday. If he has a big game against Stanford on a big stage, we could be talking about him having a Heisman moment then. I think we've seen Winston's Heisman moment, which was the entire Clemson game, a.k.a. the Death Valley snuff film. The young man at Baylor, he plays at Baylor. They haven't played anyone. There's no Heisman moment there. I'm blanking. I need the last 2.
Manziel, McCarron.
Manziel, of course, he's the double ends. Manziel, it's just a record thing. I think, and we've talked about it before the podcast, I think Mike Evans makes it in before he does. He'll get invited back just because it looks good and just because it's a good visual, but I think Mike Evans is a bit more deserving this year. You went over the stats as far as yardage and yards after catch and making himself available for Johnny Manziel. And McCarron, he gets the call, but you're going to split South votes with Manziel, first of all, and second of all, and Evans, if you have a look at all 3. And second of all, it's just, if you look at what Winston's done this year, it's hard to, for me, to say that, he doesn't deserve at least to be not only in the conversation, but probably the front runner today, Wednesday, whatever the date is.
Yeah, I'll go, and then I'll kind of pass it over to Chad. And I honestly think that what we're going to have here is Mariota's game against Stanford better than Jameis Winston's was against Clemson, and the bar's been set pretty damn high. And I think that whoever has the better quote unquote Heisman game, because I do think it's going to take more than just one play or something along those lines. I think that whoever has the better Heisman game of those 2 is going to walk away with it. Manziel, some of that even I think is a record thing. Bryce Petty, I just have a real hard time giving it to him over Winston or Mariota. And McCarron, same thing. I think if we were going to give him an award for lifetime achievement, that'd be great. But that's not what the Heisman is. That's not how people should vote. Chad, what are your thoughts on these 5?
Alabama's offense has struggled all season. McCarron's a non-factor in the Heisman. Bryce Petty's only really played half of every game he's played in outside of Kansas State. I don't really consider him a factor. I consider him a cog in the system, especially after RG3 just won the Heisman there 2 years ago. To me, it comes down to the other 3, Mariota, Jameis, and Manziel. With Manziel, you have voter fatigue and the fact that the pompous idiots that vote for this thing are going to blame him for his summer activities. So I think he's out, although he had a Heisman moment in a loss, which I've never seen before, when he basically separated his shoulder against Auburn and came back into the game, threw another touchdown pass, put him up for a second. To me, it comes down to Mariota and famous Jameis. And I think y'all are both right in Mariota needing to have a big moment against Stanford. But can you have a Heisman moment on the third play from scrimmage of a football game? Because that's what Jameis Winston did on his back shoulder throw to Rashad Green that took the life right out of Clemson in that 51-14, as Palmer said, at snuff film. And Jameis Winston, if asked, would he rather have a national championship or a lifetime supply of cheese balls? The man said, I'd rather have a national championship, but I'm going to get my cheese balls. Not only is Jameis Winston going to get the cheese balls, he's going to get the Heisman too. And with an Oregon or an Alabama loss this year, he might get himself a national championship as well. He's incredible. He doesn't even have feeling in his middle finger because he almost cut it off dunking a basketball when he was 12 years old. Love the guy. I'm going to watch every game they play. I will make a shameless plug for my weekly viewing guide tomorrow. I am recommending the Florida State at Wake Forest game to see what he does next. Jameis Winston for Heisman.
That's right. Check it out on dutycrazy.net. Sadly, we all agree there, so hopefully we will not agree on the next topic. I have arbitrarily taken the top 9 in the BCS poll. I'm cutting it off there for no reason other than that's just where I wanted to stop. What we're going to do is we're going to have our own informal poll, and the way we're voting for this is who we think will be in the national championship game. And we're voting on this on a 1 to 10 scale, so kind of the idea that we all like Bama a lot.
Oh, God.
Yeah, Palmer's excited. This is going to be great. All I need from you guys is the likelihood of these teams making it, and I'm starting with you, Palmer. Bama, 1 to 10.
Is 10 high or is 1 high?
10's high, obviously.
Okay, well, the rankings work opposite, so I had to ask.
So do we only have 20 points to allocate? Because
Stop it.
1 to 10 on each one. You can give everybody 10. I won't call you out.
Fair enough. It's a 10.
Chad, Alabama.
Give me an 8.5.
Oh, for the love of God.
We're whole numbers only. I'm rounding you up to 9.
All right, I'll take 9. That's
State.
closer to what I like.
Florida State, Palmer.
9.
I forgot to say on Bama, I'm an 8. Chad,
Okay.
on Florida State.
What are you going Florida State? I'm going 7, just for the
I'm
record.
going 7 as well. Oregon, Palmer.
9.
I'm going 8.
How can you do that?
We're going to be 9s across the board.
Oh, no, there's a huge dip coming.
The old 9 for 9. For Oregon, I'm going to take another 9 here.
Ohio State, Palmer.
5.
I'm a 4. Chad.
3.
Stanford, Palmer.
5.
I'm a 3. Chad.
6.
Baylor.
0.
I'm a 0.
1.
Clemson.
0.
There's no way. I'm a 0.
0. Absolutely. They can't make the ACC championship game.
You know, after 5, it's not really that compelling.
Wait till we get to Missouri.
0.
Okay.
I'm a 1.
What?
Chad.
How? No, I'm taking a 0, but I want you to explain yourself.
No, I'm going to attack both of you when we're done with this. Go ahead.
Stranger things have happened than Missouri winning out through their slate and upsetting Bama in a 1-loss SEC champion.
That's a 2-loss Mizzou team.
That's a 1-loss Mizzou team.
It's a 1-loss Mizzou team.
Right.
They're gonna beat A&M.
Yeah.
And Bama.
Yeah, I said win out.
Okay.
I mean, I think it's within the realm of possibility. They've continually outperformed my expectation, even on a week-to-week basis.
But is their loss good enough to jump an Oregon loss to Stanford, a Stanford loss to Utah, or a Florida State loss to whoever?
Yeah, I think on a lot of that on conference credibility alone.
That's fair. No, that's fair.
Playing the SEC slate.
The win over Alabama, a win over an undefeated Alabama would vault them. But guess what? That's not going to happen.
That's why I said a 1. It's not like I said an 8.
You also gave Bama an 8.
Didn't Alabama score 42 points in the first quarter against Missouri last year?
In a second.
Alabama is an 8 because I'm concerned a little bit about this LSU game for them.
Awesome. Cool. We'll talk about that. Is this on the list?
Number 9, Auburn.
I'll go 5.
What?
Yeah.
Wait.
So you gave me hell for picking Missouri at 1, and you're picking Auburn with a 5?
Crazy things happen in rivalry games, and this is a good Auburn team. I don't see them losing to the East champ, and a one-loss Auburn team might do it.
All right. I'm going 2. Chad.
I'm going about -5 here.
The first negative vote.
You've been the Auburn backer since we started this thing 26 episodes.
Like
I said at the beginning of this podcast, I don't know if they're a top 15, top 20 team.
You're picking the worst time to jump off the bandwagon. Like the single worst time.
My job is done. My job is done for Auburn and Missouri. They are bowl eligible. They are now on their own.
Good job, Chad. You did it.
So, what matters here is we've got Bama playing Oregon in the national championship.
No.
That's what we got. That's what we got.
Fine. Under severe protest from me.
What do you think it should be?
It's going to be, first of all, it should be, and the better game would be Bama, Florida State.
Well, then why did you put Oregon as a 9 and Florida State as a 9?
Because if Florida State loses, you said most likely to happen. I said either one of those can happen.
Yeah, I'm not saying this is what we want. I'm just saying what we have most likely to happen.
Fine. If they both went out, they have an equal shot of getting in. I personally would put Florida State above them because of basic competition. But hey, I'm not a voter. My votes don't count.
All right, Chad, how do you feel about a Bama-Oregon matchup, or would you rather see Bama-Florida State?
I would much rather see Bama-Florida State. I'm an ACC guy.
Mr. Not rooting for a conference.
They are not indicative of the ACC. I want to make that very clear to everyone, especially you.
No, I would like to see. I mean, it's actually a fairly regional.
I think he combined regional and reasonable.
It's a good regional rivalry. They haven't played in about 4 or 5 years, I don't think. But that would be just a compelling as heck ball game too. I mean, Winston against that secondary without Sinceri, McCarron going for three in a row, and then Oregon just. I just don't see we've seen that in the national championship game against an SEC team. What is that noise? And it doesn't work.
I'm drinking water.
Yeah, I would much prefer to see Alabama versus Florida State, or even Oregon versus Florida State. I'm tired of Alabama.
They're the best football team on the planet.
I'm tired of the best football team on the planet. All right. Palmer, you said you were going to call us out on a few things. You want to take it away with some closing thoughts on whatever you want to talk about?
My closing thoughts are on this ridiculous game he's going to play that somehow contrived these votes to pitting the worst possible matchup. I spoke earlier as to why Alabama would decimate, destroy by a power of 10 the Oregon Ducks. I'm cheering for Alabama, Florida State. Matchup-wise, it's great up front. I think these receivers on the outside of Florida State might be the best group in the country. We were talking about earlier, the loss of Mason Sari could really impact that game. I cheer for greatness, man. I watched the finals last year cheering for the Heat and the Spurs. Really, they're both great franchises. But I want to see something great in my time. No one's going to be bouncing their kid on the knee talking about the time Oregon snuck in and won a national title. No one. We will talk about the run of continued SEC dominance and the particular run of Nick Saban decimating, again, the entire country in college football and then leaving for Texas.
Let's talk about this. The Saban watch is in full effect.
Oh.
There's all these stories about his agent shopping him, and there's just more and more detail coming out to the point where either somebody's very creative in the rumors they start and very thorough in those, or this is a real possibility. Palmer, you think it could happen?
Oh, yes. I've told people that from day one that Saban is what he is. Some of the quotes that have leaked out in the last 2 days are That makes sense. It's a unique pressure he's created for himself with the level of success he's attained at Alabama. At least their fans aren't crazy enough to, I don't know, poison someone's trees. Oh, wait, these people are insane. So the level of fanaticism he's built up there, there are very few schools in the country, places in the country where he can have the level of control he wants, and they could make it a more attractive financial offer. That place, that front runner, the conversation has always been Texas. I think, just as an aside, young man, the coach whose name just completely lost my mind, is it Freeze out in USC? Who's coaching USC right now?
Orgeron.
Yeah.
Orgeron's doing an amazing job with that squad, and I think he may actually earn himself a contract.
I don't know. His track record was so terrible when he was at Ole Miss.
I agree, but it's also Ole Miss. It's not like they're friggin' world beaters. This is USC. He's got a kind of built-in infrastructure. That said, Saban to Texas to me not only makes sense, it feels like the right move and almost the right time. You hate to see someone go out. You hate to see someone go out, period. But going out on top also is kind of weird. You don't really see it a lot. But Saban's not a conventional guy. A lot of these coaches are close to the best guys. They don't tell you about their game plans. Oregon's holding up placards with signs on it. Meanwhile, Nick Saban goes around the country and tells you his X's and O's and teaches clinics and lets them be videotaped. You can go online right now and watch how Alabama's offense works. The thing about it is he coaches what he does better than anyone else in the country. And so if you read the GQ piece on Saban this year, it's a big on the system and
great.
The process, and he's kind of bought into that. And so you can go somewhere where people can buy into that, and he can bring his process with him and bring his guys with him. He can succeed wherever he wants to go, and it sounds like, whether he says it or not, he kind of wants to go to Texas. That said, last point. Every time there's a Texas rumor or any rumor, all we've all done is help Nick Saban make more money from Alabama. So we'll see what really happens now. I'm done.
That's perfect transition. Saban makes, I think, $5.5 million a year, thereabouts. Maybe it's 5.6. Chad, if you're Texas and you've got all the money in the world, what dollar figure do you throw at Nick Saban on a per-year basis?
I think 10's been the working number that everybody said, oh my God, Texas is going to try to throw $10 million at Nick Saban. I think at that point that's become a little bit dry, so I think 13.5 is going to be the number that gets Nick Saban out of Tuscaloosa to Austin, which, show of hands, who's ever been to Tuscaloosa, Alabama? Yeah? Who's ever been to Austin, Texas?
I have not, but I'd rather go there.
You're right. You're 100% right there, Andrew.
That pretty much makes my point. As far as places to live, Terry Saban looking for vacation housing in Austin, Texas. I don't think that's a place you would vacation, but I think that's a place you would much rather live than T-Town. Yeah, $13.5 million to move to a better town where people don't poison trees, and where you haven't just won 3 national titles in a row, presumably, which you can't do any better than that. They're going to lose a game, miss out on a national championship, lose 2 or 3 the next year like they did in 2010, and all of a sudden people are calling for Saban's head. Why would you deal with that when you could go to Texas, have a gimme year, and start over, and with the resources at Texas, do it even better in an easier conference with more recruits, more locally, that are going to come to Texas anyway, and teach your system to guys who are going to buy in because you're Nick freaking Saban. I mean, to me, if I was Saban, I'd do it for the same pay, just because I think he's the type of person that likes the challenge. But I think 13.5 is going to be the number that actually sways him.
Very good. Palmer, any other closing thoughts, and what are you up to this weekend?
Like I said, head up to New York City. Go Lions. Going to watch the Lions of Columbia. I don't know if you can catch the hoodie in the video, but there it is, the real thing. Yeah, going up to New York, see some old friends, show the girl the campus, prove I did indeed graduate from college, catch a little college football live for the first time this year, and hopefully make it back in time to sit down with a nice cold beer and watch LSU Alabama.
Very good. Chad, aside from catching maybe half of a Georgia football game and watching Aaron Murray get that record, any specific plans?
Not at all, man. This is going to be a pretty easy one from my perspective. The wallet took a hit as well this weekend and the weekend before going up to North Carolina, so I am just going to be on coast mode. What you got, Hall?
I'm going up to D.C. I've got a conference that starts Sunday, so I'm going up. Two of my best friends live in D.C., so I'm flying up there. Going to get there around 11:30 Saturday morning, and probably just find a bar and watch football all day. That's my plan, and then act professional, I guess, Sunday through Wednesday. But should be a good time. I hadn't been up to D.C. since I was like 5 years old, so I'm hoping nothing's changed. All right, guys. Palmer, DPalm66 on Twitter. Any closing sentence? Go.
Go Dogs, go Lions.
Chad Floyd, Chad_Floyd. Closing sentence.
Go Heels, and I'm missing Bulls Pacers right now, so I'm going to go watch some of that.
Amen to that.
There we go. All right. Thanks, guys.